Welcome to the vodcast lecture for LIN2603 module titled Sounds and Sound Structure. And in this video we are going to focus on Unit 1 of your study guide. I am your lecturer, Mr. Letswalo. During this video, I will give you a broad overview on important topics and concepts covered in Unit 1. Please note that this video does not replace your study guide. You have to refer back to your guide in order to adequately prepare for the compulsory assignments and exam. Remember to have a piece of paper and a pen ready so that you can have your own notes at the end of the lecture. So, let's jump into the content of Unit 1. In this learning unit, we start by looking at the sounds of human language, and we outlined that not all sounds that we produce are suitable to be used in speech. We then focus on the spelling of sounds. We learned that we must not allow ourselves to be misled by the written representation or the spelling of the way in which we write our words. We will see that one letter can represent more than one sound, or the same sound can be spelled in different ways. We will use the phonetic alphabet of sounds in order to understand this better. We find out what is meant by phonetics. We look at the different branches of phonetics, which are articulatory phonetics, acoustic phonetics, and auditory phonetics. We finally take a look at phonology. We look at the way in which sounds function in the system of specific languages. Human beings can produce hundreds of different sounds, and these sounds include coughs, sneezes, sniffs, and clearing of throats. And we learned that not all of these sounds, actually the sounds that we just mentioned now, are not suitable to be used for speech. So, if that's the case, that we can make all these sounds, then we have to ask ourselves, what is the difference between the speech sounds and the other sounds that we can produce? Let us look at the following sounds, for example. Imagine it's your birthday and there are candles on your birthday cake, and they ask you to blow out the candles. How are you going to blow out those candles? Depending on how you blow out your wind from the air from your mouth, you are likely to make a sound like or listening to the sound that I just made now. You might think that we used sounds like or woo of the human language, but however, these sounds are not the same as the sound of human language. When you blow out the candlelight, you are required to use too much force. If you do not use too much force, you will not succeed in blowing out those candles. But when you speak, you can't blow out too hard because you won't produce the required sound. On the same note, there are many possible ways in which one can extinguish the fire from the candle. You can decide to use your fingers to put the flames out, or you can pour water on the flames. However, the speech sounds do not have an alternative. One sound has its own function, and there's no other sound that can perform that particular function. Take a look at the following example. The word fall cannot start with any other sound. It has to remain the same. It has to start with the same sound, which is f. If we replace the initial sound of the word fall with the sound t, then we are going to have a totally different word. That is a new word, and the word will be tall. And the fact that these two sounds form part of the English words such as fall tall, fight, and tight is proof enough that they are actually speech sounds and no other sounds. And we get this from our knowledge of language. It determines which aspects of pronunciation are linguistically suitable and significant and which ones are not. For instance, if one were to cough in the middle of a sentence like, I am coming, the addressee will understand and simply ignore the cough or the clearing of throat and interpret the sentence as, I am coming. Our minds have been programmed to be able to understand and distinguish speech sounds and the other sounds that we make. The interesting thing about our minds is that when, for example, your friend tells you that I saw a psychologist today, then your mind interprets it differently so that you can be able to understand the sounds that are used in that particular sentence. And in your mind, this is what happens. And that is how you can be able to tell that the initial alphabet for the word psychology is P, while the initial sound of the word psychology is S. However, your mind needs to be trained, or else you won't be able to draw a line between sounds and alphabets. When our minds are trained, then our subconscious linguistic knowledge helps us to focus on speech sounds when we interpret a meaning. And that's what we do in phonetics and phonology. We focus on speech sounds. This means that we do not allow ourselves to be misled by the way in which words are written or the way in which they are spelled, but we focus on the sounds and we know that which sounds are present in which word. If I were to ask you, how many vowels are there in English? You will probably give the answer 5. And these are the vowels that you have been taught from primary and also in high school. And these are A, E, I, O, and U. However, there are more than 5 vowels. In fact, in almost in every language, there are more than 5 vowels. It is just that there are only 5 letters in the alphabet that we can use to symbolize vowels in writing. Remember, we said that different vowels can be, or different alphabets actually can be represented with the same sound. Take a look at the following example. Meet, meet, try, flies, buy, mine, laugh, and loaf. In these words, different spellings of the same sound are illustrated. In the first 2 words, which are meet, the 2 words sound alike and should therefore be transcribed phonetically the same. And this is how we transcribe them. Meet. That phonetic transcription represents the spelling phonetically of the 2 words. In the second group, 4 different spellings of the sound I are illustrated. And in the last line, 2 possible spellings for the sound F are given. If you listen to the words when you pronounce them, listening to the sound, you will be able to detect where the similarity lies. In phonetics, we call this problem a mismatch between sound and spelling. And this mismatch is not restricted to English only. It is also found in other languages. This is a phonetic alphabet chart. and we find the correct spelling of sounds on it. On this chart, we find the consonants only. The phonetic alphabet is an international symbol system which has only one symbol for each human speech sound. This one-to-one match between symbol and sound means that linguists always know exactly which sound they are discussing, even if they are communicating in writing. This enables them to transcribe languages consistently and accurately. You won't find linguists in South Africa treating sound differently with those who are in Ethiopia, Egypt, or even United States of America or United Kingdom. Phonetic symbols are usually enclosed in square brackets to indicate that the transcription is phonetic. For example, you see that on the screen. Whenever a letter is enclosed in single quotation marks, we are now talking about the spelling, not the phone. One of the ways in which we will help you familiarize yourself with the IPA is by writing all important concepts in this module in phonetic symbols as we introduce them to you. Writing words using phonetic symbols is known as transcribing, and the written version of indicating pronunciation of a spoken word is known as phonetic transcription. You will need to learn the phonetic symbols and how to transcribe spoken words, as this is one of the skills outcomes of this module. For example, phonetics is transcribed as follows. Phonetics is a scientific study of the inventory of speech sounds which human beings are capable of producing and is independent of a specific language. The main focus of phonetics is the actual and concrete properties of the sounds in human languages. In a typical human communication event, there are three elements which are involved, namely the speaker who sent a message to someone, the hearer. Speech sounds have a unique property during each of these three elements of communication. Firstly, with the speaker, speech sounds are articulated in the mouth using speech organs. Then the message is communicated from the mouth and sounds are transmitted through the sound waves. And from the sound waves to the hearer, sounds are perceived by the ear and decoded by the brain. And this whole process involves the three different complementary perspectives that correspond to these elements of communication. And these three complementary perspectives are actually the branches in linguistics. The first one is articulatory phonetics and is transcribed as follows. This is the study of the activities of speech sounds of the speaker when being produced. Actually, articulatory phonetics focuses on the activities of the speech organs, the way in which speech organs operate in the mouth of the speaker when producing speech sounds. Secondly, we have acoustic phonetics, which is transcribed as follows, and it focuses on the physical properties of the sound waves that are transmitted through the air during the production of speech sound or during the communication when the speaker and the hearer are communicating. And then there's also auditory phonetics, which is transcribed as follows, and this one focuses on the activities in the ear and the brain of the hearer when perceiving and decoding speech sounds. In this module, we focus mainly on articulatory phonetics. However, we won't be doing justice if we just discuss phonetics alone. Let's see what phonology is. We transcribe it as follows. And phonology concerns itself with sounds function in the system of a specific language. In other words, a phonological study will reveal the relationship between sounds of a specific language when they feature in morphemes or in words. Let's take, for example, this sound. We look at this sound and see how this sound functions in specific languages and see if it relates to any sound in that particular language. Remember that languages are different. So when we're dealing with each language, you will see that there are different rules that apply regarding one sound which is present in the phonetic chart. Let's start by looking at Afrikaans. When coming to this sound, in Afrikaans we have only one type of the sound. But other languages in South Africa use more than one type of the same sound. Languages like English, isiNdebele, isiSotho, and Setswana, they use more than one type of the sound that we are discussing. In English, for example, this sound can be written as P, and this P sound is only used at the beginning of a word or a syllable, like in the word pen. And we also have P, which is used after another sound, like in span. If you listen carefully when you pronounce these two words, you can hear that they actually sound different when it comes to the sound P. However, in Setswana, the rules apply differently. Both sounds can be used at the beginning of a word. For example, Papa, which means father, and Papa, which means chop. The important point that we are making here is that all these are phonological statements because they refer to the way in which speech sounds are used in a language and not how they appear or their physical properties. But you have to note that not all the physical properties and the physical differences of sounds are important or meaningful in a specific language. They might be meaningful in one language and find that the other language does not necessarily look at the physical appearance of a sound. For example, while English uses the difference between f and t to distinguish meaning, as we saw earlier when we were discussing the word fall and tall, it does not actually use the difference between p and p to distinguish meaning. However, Setswana does not regard any difference when it distinguishes the meaning of sounds. Note that the physical sound differences are used in different ways in these two languages. Languages differ not only in the choice of sounds used within a language, but also in the functions that they assign to different sounds, and whether or not particular sounds are used to create meaning, contrast, or similarities. In this learning unit, we introduced the study of speech sounds, and we said that there are many sounds that humans are capable of producing, but not all of these sounds are suitable to use in human languages. These sounds have special properties that makes them suitable for use in a language. And we also learned that writing is not a perfect representation of speech sounds. We saw that a mismatch can occur between sounds and letters or alphabets. we learned that the study of the physical properties of speech sounds is known as phonetics. And we also learned about the 3 types or branches of phonetics, which are acoustic, articulatory, and auditory phonetics. But we said that in this module we are going to focus on articulatory phonetics. And we also learned about phonology and phonological statements. We also learned that communication involves 3 elements, which is the speaker, the message, and the hearer, meaning that if one is missing from that channel, then there won't be any communication. Remember to use my UNISA or visit my UNISA site for additional resources and to make use of the discussion forum to talk about the content of this lecture and to ask questions where you need clarity. And also ask to join the Facebook group to meet your fellow students. I hope to see you in the next video where we'll be focusing on Unit 2.